All right, if you have ever set a fitness or wellness-based New Year's resolution only to crash and burn, then this talk is for you. It is my hope by the end of this that you will have a high-level 100,000-foot systems view of what it takes to force the body to change, how your own psychology can limit that, and how we can take both into consideration when choosing which interventions to try to improve your health. So I'm going to give you a 4-step iterative process to do that, and that's what you can walk away here with. First, we need to understand that human beings are both homeostatic and hedonic creatures. We do things both because we need them to survive, eat, sleep, drink, etc., and we do things because we derive pleasure from them. And sometimes we can use our hedonic impulses to override our homeostatic ones and do things that may not be good for our health, but we do them anyway because we enjoy them. Case in point, alcohol consumption. Alcohol is literally a poison, and yet many of us imbibe because we like the way it makes us feel. More on homeostasis. You can think of it as a equilibrium state that is bound on either end, containing all of your current physical abilities. In order to have any kind of change in the human body, we need to disrupt homeostasis. To do that, we need to apply a strong enough stimulus to knock us out of those equilibrium bands. So if I am already a marathoner and I take my dog for a walk around the block, that is not going to be a strong enough stimulus to further cause me to adapt aerobically. Similarly, if I'm constantly lifting kids, groceries, and luggage, but I go to the gym and try to lift 5-pound weights, it's not going to do anything for me. It's represented by the dashed line right here. It's not enough of a stimulus to cause change. The solid line represents the ideal. We apply a stimulus, it causes us to go into a fatigue state, the body bounces back and comes back stronger, positive adaptation, and that brings us to the critical point, point B. It's at point B that I want to apply the stimulus yet again. If I don't, I will return to baseline. If I do, I will once again go into a fatigue state and bounce back and supercompensate. My baseline will actually rise up, and this waveform will trend positively, which is how we theoretically adapt over time in a positive direction. This is why we say that consistency is the most important factor for success. I need to do this repeatedly in order to have long-term change. Unfortunately, most people undertake interventions that are so psychologically draining and stressful that they end up quitting. And then if they decide to get back into it, they try to do too much all at once, which is represented by the dotted line here, where we go for intensity, one big serious bout, and it drives us too far into a fatigue state so that we cannot recover, and it takes us days to get back to baseline with no positive adaptation. So it's important to note that our psychological stress can be modeled largely the same way, and that there's a very good reason for this. Physical training is a form of stress. It is deliberately applied, but at the end of the day, your body does not differentiate between physical stress and psychological stress. So our body will adapt and have a resistance phase. Again, I get in my alarm phase, I'm stressed, the stressor occurs, my body adapts, it builds up resistance, but I can only allow myself to remain in this state for so long. Ultimately, I end up burned out. This is physical and mental exhaustion, depression, or physical injury. So we need to be aware of the fact that if we're undertaking too many stressful things, there is going to be a breaking point. This presents us with a conundrum. On the one hand, we need to apply a physical stressor that's taxing enough that it forces our bodies to change, but that in turn is also psychologically taxing, so we need to have a stimulus that is not so draining that we're going to end up in the exhaustion phase. So how do we balance those two requirements? That is where leverage comes into play. Step one, we need to set a goal. It doesn't matter if it's heart health, it doesn't matter if it's body composition, whatever you like, set your goal. Step two, we're going to list every possible intervention that will help get you towards that goal. In step three, we're going to score each intervention. You're going to give it 2 scores. A physiological score on a scale of 1 to 10 based on how impactful it is from a physiological standpoint, and a psychological score based on how tolerable it is for you and how likely you are to stick to it based on your life. Each score is out of 10. We multiply those 2 scores together and get a numeric score out of 100. Based on the ranking of these interventions, you then choose the one that is going to be most impactful for you. So for example, if my goal is to improve my body composition, the top 3 interventions would be adequate protein intake, at least 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight, has a physiological score of 10. Resistance training 2+ times per week has a physiological score of 10 as well. And then sleep. 8+ hours of sleep per night has a physiological score of 9. Now comes the time for brutal self-awareness. Most people can adhere to more protein. There are numerous interventions and ways to add protein into your diet. And I said this was an iterative process. If you decide to go with protein as your intervention, you then repeat this process for the specific methods to figure out which one is going to be most realistic for you. We don't have time to do that now. But the point is, most people can adhere to additional protein in their diet, so that gets a psychological score of 10, which gives us the numeric 100. Resistance training. Let's say you're a busy individual and you travel a lot and you can't commit 100% of the time to getting at least 2 sessions a week. Maybe that gives us a score of 6. So 10 times 6 gives us a numeric of 60. Sleep. It is impactful, but if you're like me, there's no way in hell you're going to get 8+ hours of sleep a night. I'm up at 4 a.m. most days. I can't get to sleep at 8 p.m. because I'm putting my daughter to bed at 8 p.m. and there's no guarantee that she's going to sleep through the night. She has night terrors. So that's just not a realistic intervention for me. So that gets a psychological score of 2. Based on these, I have 3 scores, 100, 60, and 18. Which intervention am I going to choose first? Protein. I'm going to try that for 3 weeks. If I can adhere to it, great, it's a habit. Maybe then I'll try to worry about resistance training. And if I'm not able to stick to that, maybe I drop it. Maybe I need to reevaluate these from a psychological perspective and update my scores. But the point is, you now have a method for scoring each intervention. Pick the one with the highest score, and that's going to give you the most bang for your buck.